Yeah, imagine like you're on Survivor and somebody's like chowing down a quarter pounder in front of you. You're like, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
you're gonna hate it. You'd be
Would be
hating
so
it
pissed.
after not
Hate that
eating for
person.
10 after not eating for
Oh,
10 days and they're eating like a Big Mac. Oh man, you're
hell
eliminated
yeah.
next. Hey, you're going. I'm gonna write your name down.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Be hella pissed.
Uh,
Yeah.
all right, welcome everybody to another episode of Banter on the Rocks. Today is Monday, May 5th. So happy Cinco de Mayo to those out there. This episode comes out, on Wednesday, so it's already past Cinco de Mayo. But happy Cinco de Mayo, or for those that celebrate Star Wars, happy May the Sith be with you. For those dark side, Star Wars fans, Darth Vader, Anakin,
Love it.
fans. So. Um, yeah, it's Monday. So we have a great episode today. But before we get on to the show, we want to discuss our brand ambassadorship. So we are brand ambassadors for Find the Good. Find the Good is focused on finding the good and building a community of people who want to help find the good. So for all purchases, Find the Good gives back 10% to Mental Health of America organization. So when you order and use our promo code Banter805, you will receive 10% off your purchase. So that's 10% for you, 10% back to mental health. So remember to use the code Banter805 for 10% off. Um, and to just go on to the show today, we'll be discussing our banter takes as always, giving each other our takes. We'll continue talking about the NBA playoffs and the updates of what happened in the first round. We are officially in round two. I've had some games, so we'll talk about those. Um, we're going to talk a little bit about Jordan Hudson, Bill Belichick's girlfriend, who has been in the news quite a bit recently with recent interviews and some of the actions she did. We all have our feelings. We've heard it in the news, so we'll talk a little bit about that and just much more, right? We have a few other topics we want to discuss. But we'll go into our banter drinks of the week. And today I have celebrating Cinco de Mayo. I don't have margarita mix, but I'm doing a Jamaica with tequila. So sticking with the tequila, but always good, refreshing. Still pretty chilly down here.
Oh, yeah. There you go. All right. Well, I wish it was chilly. It was really hot up here today. It's like 90 degrees over here. It's summer's definitely come early.
Yeah.
So something refreshing for sure. One tequila with Sprite today.
Oh,
So
nice.
good little mixture. Threw a lime in
Yeah.
there because why not? Get that citrus vibe going.
Yes.
Really tasty so far though. Happy I did this because yeah, much needed after
Yeah.
working in this heat. So
Yeah. No, for sure. Much needed. It's always good. Tequila and Sprite, tequila squirt, tequila
hell
with
yeah.
anything. It's
Paloma.
it's Palomas. They're good. But yeah, we'll go into our banter takes. So, disclaimer as always, these are our banter takes, takes that we send each other. We don't know what they are prior. We're gonna roll with them throughout, the entire year until they get proven wrong, right, whatever it is. So I'll read mine first. Um, so with Trump wanting to bring back Alcatraz, can he please do the people a solid and demand a GTA 6 release for the summer of 2025? Yes, the way Trump is doing a lot of things, I think he has the power to be able to tell Rockstar, you need to release GTA or else we are going to charge you, X amount of fines because the the big news I would say in the gaming community is GTA, push or I don't want to say push back because from what I've heard, there wasn't even a release date. We were all anticipating fall of 2025, but now the official release date is what, March 2026
No, unfortunately,
or
May
May, May,
2026.
May,
Yeah, one more
even
year.
more, a whole year. So it's like, there should have been some, why did that happen? They were on so much progress. It seems like they've been putting so much into this game that are they just doing it to mess with us? Is Rockstar really struggling with the game? Is that one trailer that came out a month ago actually even real, or is that an AI generated trailer? I think is also the question now, because people are asking why push it back a whole year when it was supposed to be released soon. So I think Trump has the power as our president to do a lot of things, and I think he can make a big effort in having it release either summer or like, back to the fall of 2025 as planned.
Yeah, summer sun's even better. It's just because it's even sooner. But yeah, I mean, we want to bring back something that's been, out of service like what, 80 years now? I think like,
Yeah.
when Capone was there was like the last
Yeah.
time Alcatraz was even open. It's been a tourist attraction even ever since. So, if we can bring something back like that, I think he
hmm
could probably, pull a few strings
You
to
can.
get us GTA 6 a little sooner. And imagine that, the running joke is always, hey, we have this before GTA 6, this before GTA 6.
Yeah.
Imagine we get Alcatraz fully functional again before GTA 6.
That
You
would
know,
be
it's
insane.
that's wild. But yeah, big disappointment. And the news was broken by, wasn't it like Sports Center or ESPN?
hmm
I didn't know they broke gaming news like that. That
Neither
was,
did I.
yeah, it was interesting. I was kind of shocked to see that.
Yeah.
I think you were the one that shared the link, right, John,
Yeah,
in the
I
group
think
chat?
I saw it, yeah, that morning, and I was like, oh no, gotta share it
Yeah.
with everybody. And I think we were all in shock, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. No, that stinks.
Ah,
Everybody's looking forward to it. I was talking with my wife earlier today about the new Switch that's coming out, and I told her,
hmm
hey, it's they're jacking up those prices though,
Yeah.
and we were talking about like how it's $80 games now, and then I told her
Yeah.
like GTA 6, I bet you it's going to be the first $100 game, but
Yeah.
I said worth it. But just waiting another year, that really sucks. But like you said, there was no definitive, info that
hmm
said it was going to be coming out in the fall. And then like you said, trailers, is it AI? Is it not? I question that in almost every video I watch these
Yeah.
days. So, it's one of those things that we're still gonna have to wait. I think the wait will be worth it, even though I see a lot of the social media community just commenting back saying y'all can keep it. So, but when it comes out, they're gonna buy it. So, it's
Yeah. It's funny, yeah, because I see that too. Y'all can keep it. When it comes out, I'm still gonna buy it just because of the name GTA, and we've been waiting many years for it. And I hope they're doing a good service to the game. The reason they're delaying it is to make it that great game that we're all expecting. Um, but like I say, it's still unfortunate because they've had so many years. I hear there are billions of dollars into this game already, so I
jeez.
imagine it's going to be sold for $100. And I think just the online part of the game, it's even GTA 5 right now. I think it's still making them millions of dollars, so they'll be making billions within that first year, in the US and worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. And another kind of thought that has come to mind recently about like why it's taken so long, maybe why they've delayed it. It feels like they've delayed it like three, four times now,
hmm
but of course it's all rumors with release dates
Yeah.
usually and things like that. But it also makes me think, is there some type of like, I don't know, graphics or some type of,
hmm
computer technology that's coming out within these months that maybe we don't quite know about yet,
hmm
or reasons why they're delaying it? That way they can implement it into the game.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the copy wouldn't be quite as good if, we release it in 2024.
hmm
Let's wait until 2026 because this tech is going to be out and
hmm
that'll help the game, even more. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. And then if that's the case, I think it's really worth it because then hopefully we have less updates
hmm
to a game like this in the future.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's just more, hopefully it's not Call of Duty, number, two where we're just constantly updating and it
Yes.
destroys your storage. So Yeah, regardless, I'm stoked for it. I
Hmm.
think it'll be well worth the wait. It's just the wait is grueling.
Yeah, the wait is grueling. Like I said, Trump, if you could help us get this game a lot quicker, I think he'd enjoy the game too. I think everybody has played the game from GTA 3, 4 when it
Yeah.
became popular, and that was many, many years ago when we were kids. So, um, yeah, hopefully, if Trump, hopefully this game comes out before Alcatraz opens up again, if it does open up again, because if it doesn't, it's just gonna be. Man, what else is gonna happen? We might get the PS6 probably before.
Right. Yeah, seriously. We might be there. All right. So moving on. Got my next take. Similar name in here. Exact same name. Trump's proposed 100% tariff on movie production could be the end of major box office films and also push away a lot of people from watching movies and or TV. This will also hurt international films being released in the States and US produced films of being played internationally. Yes, that's the talk of the town is all of these
Mhm.
tariffs, how it's going to affect. We see companies now
Hmm.
going towards, hey, this would have been the cost non-tariff. Here is your
Yeah.
cost with a tariff. Um, we kind of all, I think, kind of thought about not getting too political, but of course we kind of think when we hear the word tariff, it's going to come back, and hit our bottom dollar. And here we are
Hmm.
looking at, box office stuff where, major film productions are going to have, a lot of these issues as well.
Hmm.
And that could be a big bummer. Obviously, we talk about how much, yourself, you and Vera
Hmm.
going to the movies. I try to get there every once in a while, but it's also just a fun vibe to kind of like see people still going to the movies, enjoying it. TV's a big
Yeah.
deal. There's plenty of TV shows out there in movies. We listed them off here on our hot takes with,
Hmm.
you know, the slew of releases that are upcoming. So it's going to be
Yeah.
really disappointing if, these tariffs play a factor into these films in the development of the films. Um, because I mean, movies is what keeps us going a lot
Yeah.
of times, and it's just something to kind of get our minds off of stuff like tariffs. It's
Yes, it
it's
does.
it, it's our visual freedom. So, hopefully it doesn't get to that point. Hopefully there's something that they can do to, I don't know, work around it or not deal
Hmm.
with it. I don't know how that's gonna work, but regardless, say it ain't so, and let us have our movies.
Yeah, yeah. I'm hoping it doesn't fall through because, like you said, it's gonna affect so much. It's gonna affect the movie industry. It's gonna affect the people that like to go watch movies, and it's gonna affect those international movies. Going to the movie theaters already is a lot pricier than it was back in the day. Especially
Mhm.
snacks and all that. So now imagine this tariff going into place in a big movie release, tickets are going to be two to three times what they are right now because the movie studios have to make more money. So they're charging these theaters more money to get their movies and show them. So now the theaters are going to up the prices with everything. So, like I said, that's where it affects our bottom dollar. And the same for movies that go straight to streaming. These streaming platforms that are somewhat affordable are gonna get even higher. Disney Plus, Netflix has already made so many increases. If these tariffs come into play, we're gonna be charged probably as much as cable's being charged nowadays. So how many people are gonna go away from that? Because like I say, it's a luxury, it's something we enjoy and affordable, but once it gets unaffordable, people are gonna lose interest. So I hope it doesn't happen. For me, it sucks if it does go through because I think a lot more movies aren't going to be made as well, and we're not going to see as many blockbusters as we're seeing this summer. Like this summer, the lineup's already huge. Thunderbolts came out this past weekend. We
Mhm.
got Lilo and Stitch coming up, Mission Impossible, Jurassic World. Like, there's so many movies that pretty much, movie theaters right now, they just have our credit cards on file. They're taking our money.
Put
Or just like, here you
it
go.
on the
Just
tab.
just charge it. I'll be back tomorrow for this next movie, I'll be here every
Yep.
Saturday. You know, they're prepping for that this summer, and it won't be that way with a tariff to the movie production. Um, I see Trump, in the articles I've read, it says he wants to bring the jobs back to the US, but you know, we've always seen when the jobs come back to the US, it costs more money to make, so that's why it's just gonna not really help us at all. And these movie studios that are making movies, they're expecting the high millions revenue back into their pockets that, like I say, if there's a tariff in place, they got to charge us more, and especially if there's an international tariff, because I read somewhere that even other countries are going to charge the US a tariff just to play the movies in their countries. So they're going to be having to make a lot of money. So I think we'll feel it the most, but we'll see. Like I said, I read that today and I was like, man, I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, that would really suck. But hey, say that does happen. I think it's the perfect time to stop by on YouTube and watch Banter on the Rocks a little bit more.
Yes, it
Let
is.
fill your void. We'll be here weekly as always.
Yeah.
Maybe we could start our own sitcom, John.
Yeah.
We could
We can.
make a low budget, film, TV show, in
Yeah.
addition to the pod. But yeah, all jokes aside, maybe there's a creative environment that, maybe we'll pick up steam,
Hmm.
where maybe it's YouTube, maybe it's long length TikToks.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe there's other avenues that maybe will have a little bit more prominence should
Hmm.
something like this happen and it affects the film industry. That could be something.
Hmm.
It's you got to look at alternatives, I suppose.
Yeah.
And then streaming platforms, I guess, will just be a bunch of reruns
Yeah.
eventually. If it all halts. But hopefully it doesn't happen. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of backlash to it.
Hmm.
I think that a lot of these actors and actresses, obviously want jobs. They
Hmm.
want to make money. They want to continue on with their film, career. So, and then of course, up and comers, want a
Yeah.
chance too. So it's really prominent. Hopefully, we they can get something going where we can still have our favorite movies coming up here,
Yeah.
John. But
Yeah.
would it affect animation, you think too? Like,
I
that's
I think it might not affect animation because that gets all done in the States unless they do some animation in other countries. But like I say, it all just
yeah.
depends on how that goes. And hey, maybe that's what all the movies will be in the future. It's just animated movies with the way technology is nowadays. And even let's just be honest, with the way AI is, like you can make a movie out of anything and have anybody pretty much star in it. So,
Yeah.
these stars may be having to sell their name likeness to these movie studios to make these AI movies, and they still get a cut, but it just won't be the same cut that they were getting prior.
NIL and film.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh,
Interesting.
wow. Yep. Cut it there. It's a short.
Yes, NIL. That'd be
NIL
very
coming to
interesting.
film.
That'd be
Yeah.
very interesting.
That would be crazy. Just imagine, like AI Matt Damon
Hmm.
starring in, something, it could work for anybody,
It
just
could
where
work.
it's at. And, just these spin-offs that AI can create are,
Hmm.
it's really tricky at times. Sometimes it's super obvious.
Yeah.
Other times it's whoa, that's
Yeah.
that's dangerous. Like it's really bad.
It
So,
is.
yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. But yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And I only got one take, so I don't know if you want to send, if you got another or
yeah. Let me throw you a quick one. It'll be a little precursor into some sports talk here coming
okay.
up.
So the NBA needs to drop the draft lottery and in-season tournament. They instead need to have a sudden death tournament of losers, which is the bottom eight teams playing one another, and the winner gets the first overall pick. I I think this is a great option because some of these teams are tanking um pretty obviously, even though they say they aren't tanking. And it would make it a lot more interesting to see how hard these players play. I think on top of getting the number one pick, it's also like a cash incentive that you get for winning that number one pick. Because, like I say, for the players, there isn't much more to a number one pick other than a future potential star caliber player. So it's like, why are they gonna bust their butt to get let's say the San Antonio Spurs, they have a solid team. Why should they bust their ass to get that number one overall pick when it's not really gonna the only way it's gonna help him is maybe winning a championship within the next few years. So I think there needs to be an incentive for the players as well, um, to make it more worth their while. Because we see it with the play-in tournament, the in-season tournament, and I think that's where that money should go instead. Instead of an in-season tournament, have it the loser bracket tournament. Put it towards that, because I think those teams would play a lot harder. The Victor Wembanyama's, Stephon Castle, um, the Hornets, LaMelo Ball. I think he'd be trying to ball out, trying to win, so a few extra 100K. Their lifestyles are pricey, so that money
Oh
helps
yeah.
a lot. So yeah, I think the draft lottery, it is hit or miss. It's a little different than NFL, but it's still pretty obvious. And the in season tournament, I'm not a fan of it. It doesn't really make it more interesting. If those teams that win want to put up that in season tournament, banner, kudos to you. I think we talked about it. My Clippers would win it. I would hate that they put up that banner. I
Yeah.
would say don't put it up. It's not really worth it. Enjoy the money, enjoy the pride to win it, but as a banner, no.
Yeah, it is. It is really lame. Yeah, if you were to put a banner for that, because it's like, yeah, I won the in-season tournament, this thing that might not even last.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Overall, I completely agree. I think that there needs to be a competitive balance for these teams that are
Hmm.
underperforming or maybe just young or in. Every team goes through a rut. Doesn't matter
Hmm.
what team it is. People hit, downhill slopes
Hmm.
that just seem like, your brakes don't work. So.
Yeah.
Um, it certainly happens, but these teams that are like purposely, you know, benching players
Hmm.
for, make-believe injuries. I think that this past season, one that I remember is Lauri Markkanen
Hmm.
on the Utah Jazz. They kind of made up like a back injury. Maybe he truly had one,
Hmm.
but it was like random. I felt
Yeah.
like it was spot games where, they're playing
Hmm.
against maybe a competitive team or maybe another team that, it's, maybe on the cusp of,
Hmm.
getting the first overall pick as well. So,
Yeah.
you have a player like Larry Markkinen, who's best player on that team. Of course, you're going to bench him,
Yeah.
and have him be quote unquote injured for as long as possible, so that way you can lose out and secure a better pick, which is,
Hmm.
it's rather lame. I don't agree with it, and I think that they just need to try to come up with something, and maybe a tournament substitute like this is great. I think it's a great
Hmm.
idea, and run with it. And like you said, it's another great point. Build in some type of incentive.
Hmm.
Obviously for these 8 teams it would be like a downer year,
Hmm.
but you build in an incentive that if they win, hey, here's extra 100,
Yeah.
$250,000, whatever. And that goes a long way,
Hmm.
especially players on rookie deals at times. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
well worth it.
No, no, for sure. And I think it'll also help the team because, like I say, if you do it at the end of the season, almost like during the playoffs, have a day off of NBA playoffs and do some of these games, those home stadium, home courts, they're making money. The teams are making money because you're going to have fans at the game. You're going to be selling merch. You're going to be selling food and drinks. So it's a win-win for everybody, I think, because it's more basketball, which means more money for those people in their pockets. Maybe not 7 game series, but maybe like 5 game series, first to win three, something like that, or a 3 game
Sure,
series, first team to win 2 games. And higher seed gets 2 home games compared to 1 home game for the away, the lower seed.
for sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Make it something competitive. They want to make it lengthier, they certainly
Hmm.
can. But yeah, and then it would fill a void, if there's like, off times of, the actual NBA
Hmm.
playoffs, just throw one of these games in there
Yeah.
and, it'll fill that void of, oh yeah, let's watch the losers tournament, you
Yeah.
know. And who cares if you call it that too?
Yeah.
They know that they're a bunch of
Yeah.
losers. No, I'm just playing. They make a shit ton of money, obviously, but
Yeah. No, they make a lot of money.
yeah, fight for that first overall pick,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Delay your Cancun trip maybe a month to 2 months,
Hey,
before you go to Cancun. Try to make some
yep.
extra money for that trip. Try to, get yourself a better position for your team for the future to give you more money too. Because like I say, you get the number one pick, you're gonna get a lot more eyes on you. So it'll be interesting. We'll see how that we'll see if they do something like that. I think it would be great. Um, but like I say, Adam Silver, Adam Silver's done a lot of great things, and I think doing something like this would be the next great thing he does to the NBA.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he needs to make a move. Yeah, like you said, at least he's trying. I think
Hmm.
trying goes a long way these days. We certainly see
Yeah.
a lot of commissioners maybe not trying as much or trying the wrong things. And
Yeah.
if you can mix things up, hey,
Yeah.
we should have thrown in NBA All-Star tournament in there too. Axe
Yeah.
that and just make a losers bracket tournament.
Yeah.
Just put it all in one.
Put it all in one, put all that money into that, more money to the playoffs, something like that. Because yeah, NBA All-Star game is also a joke right now. So we'll
Yeah.
see what happens. But yeah, awesome. Those are our takes, our banter takes. And we'll go into our next just our next segment and next topic talking about NBA playoffs and the updates. And I'll start just with some
Yeah.
sad news for myself. Clipper thoughts. Unfortunate that we lost Game 7. I shout out to the Clippers though. I think prior to the season we weren't even expected to be in the playoffs. We made an amazing run. We we almost beat the team that I think could win it all again. Not back to back, but again because Joker, he's on this tear of a run. Triple average a triple double during the season. But we, the Clippers, came up short. James Harden, nowhere to be seen game 7. Um, Kawhi was very happy with Kawhi. I think hopefully he could stay healthy and we could have him another great year. Zubac had a great year, but pretty disappointed on how badly we lost game 7. I was hoping it was going to be closer. Um, but I, I don't know. I'm still a loss for words. So a little frustrated with that loss. Pissed about it. But what do you think about the Clippers, Tim? Just their run and and also like I said, nothing against the Nuggets. Nuggets played amazing.
Yeah, and I just think that was a really, really difficult series to be
Mhm.
thrown in
Yeah.
right away in the playoffs. I think that, this Denver team, we talked about it in our kind of, um, you know, I guess talk about, before the playoffs started, what we
Hmm.
thought was going to happen. And, a lot of talk about these Nuggets and what a tough series. And that was probably going to be the best
Hmm.
opening series. And, it kind of proved to be that way, going a full 7.
Hmm.
Obviously my Warriors did that too. A little bit better, happier ending
Yeah.
on my end. But,
It is.
um, your Clipper team was matched up really, really tough. But
Hmm.
again, hard fought. The Clippers have a lot of good elements to that
Hmm.
team, though. There's a lot to, build around. I think that you'd hope a little bit more from Kawhi,
Hmm.
especially in a game 7. You
Hmm.
rely heavier on him, and you hope to have a little bit of something. But a big thing is James Harden.
Hmm.
He's been ransacked by the Warriors, for a decade when he was on the
Hmm.
Rockets.
Yeah.
And, it just seems like he's a great regular season player. He just
Mhm.
can't get it done in the
No.
playoffs. I don't know if it's, he runs out of steam at the end of the
Hmm.
year. I don't know if it's I don't want to necessarily pin it on him, but
Yeah.
is he trying?
Hmm.
I think he had 7 points in the game 7.
Yeah.
I think he had 13,
Assist.
assists though,
Yeah.
but 7 points.
Yeah.
He's known to be a scorer. Maybe
Hmm.
nowadays a little bit more of a passer, I guess, but he can score at will throughout his
Hmm.
career. Like you need more than 7, in a
Yeah.
game 7 performance. That's just, kind of unacceptable, to be honest. But again, Nuggets are an incredible team, and I just looked. They ended up winning by 2 in that OKC game, which
Yeah,
is
yeah. With
insane.
with with
And
with
then,
the with a dagger three at the end from Aaron Gordon.
oh, good Lord,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean it's a hell of a team. They're super
Mhm.
stacked. They have a lot of great elements.
Mhm.
Russell Westbrook's been, you get hot and cold Russell Westbrook, but he's the difference maker.
Mhm.
And Jokic, generational player. He's gonna be
Mhm.
at least top 10 when he's all said and done.
Yeah.
42 points, 22 boards, 6 assists this game.
Mhm.
Shot over 50% from the field.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like
It,
I'm speechless.
it's crazy. I think he's already a Hall of Fame lock, first round ballot. I think there's no denying him that. And he showed it against our Clippers that he is that top player, his assisting, his rebounding, his scoring, his vision. He looks like the pudgy, NBA player, it's crazy to think that that type of player is probably one of the best NBA players at the moment and in these playoff series right now. So, kudos to him. Russell Westbrook, man, kudos to him. He was on the Clippers. He's been on many teams, but he is playing amazing. And I think I said it last episode. Between the Clippers and the Nuggets, that was my favorite to win the West. You know, we'll talk a little bit about what we saw today, but Celtics look a little off. Knicks look great, but I think if that's how their series goes, Nuggets could win it all. I
Yep.
think this might be their next toughest challenge. Nothing against the Warriors or the Timberwolves, but who can stop the Joker after a game like this against Shea and OKC? I think they win it, and then Russell Westbrook finally winning a championship and being a key piece to them winning. Kudos to him. Great story for him to finally get that ring.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the Cavs lost to Indiana. That's
Mhm.
another one. That's going to go at least 5 games now.
Mhm.
If fatigue sets in for some of these teams,
Mhm.
injuries are another factor for a lot
Yeah.
of these teams. And as long as Denver can stay healthy, they're
Hmm.
an absolute force. And I know that you made the good point of with Oklahoma City, it was kind of a similar sentiment that I had with the Houston Rockets.
Hmm.
Very young team.
Yeah.
There's obviously skill, but then there's also experience.
Hmm.
And OKC lacks the experience,
Hmm.
going deep into the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
Rockets same exact way. Put up a great fight.
Hmm.
OKC has blown out the Grizzlies. Obviously, that was a pretty easy matchup
Yeah.
for them, but regardless, like, that can also play a factor. This Denver team has been together.
Yeah.
The core that's there, Gordon, Porter, Jokic,
Hmm.
and Murray,
Hmm.
and then you add Westbrook to it, who
Yeah.
has, great experience as well throughout the NBA and is being the vet he is. I mean, it's a force to be reckoned with, and I think that goes a tremendous way. Where like you said, they made it through the Timberwolves last season,
Hmm.
or was it the season before?
Season before. Yeah.
Yeah, so they can do that there.
Hmm.
Timberwolves, we talked about them. They have good aspects to their team, obviously, amazing aspects, but
Hmm.
it's they just don't quite stack up as well against
Hmm.
certain teams. And, Denver is probably one of them.
Hmm.
You can put the thing is with Jokic as well is like, yeah, he's kind of a clodhopper in a
Hmm.
sense. He seems inathletic, but it's like his vision
Yeah.
and his touch, his feel for the game,
Yeah.
arguably second to none all time. Like
Yeah.
it's like he has 4 eyes, two in the back of his head, two in the front, and he's just elite as it
Yeah.
comes. So, you know, and he's a 7 footer, but
Hmm.
you go up against a 7 footer like Gobert, for example,
Hmm.
it's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the touch isn't there for Gobert.
Hmm.
He's a force in the interior, but outside, Jokic
Yeah.
has it. So
Yeah.
crazy.
No, yeah, it'll be interesting. This West, I think this OKC series with the Nuggets, the outcome came out today, going to be a tough fought series. We'll see how OKC responds to this loss because they were winning throughout the whole game. They had this in the bag, and Denver does what Denver does, and then tomorrow, uh, Minnesota, Golden State.
Oh
That's
yeah.
going to be a good series. Kudos to Golden State experience. I think wins games and wins series. And like you mentioned, Houston was very inexperienced, very young, just like OKC is. Uh, but this next one's going to be a challenge, I think. And Anthony Edwards has shown that he is a legend slayer. Has taken out a lot of legends. Can he do it to Steph? I think this could go a 7 game series. But I'm curious to see how the first game goes because it's going to say a lot.
I completely agree. Yeah, no, and I think a lot of analysts have it going 6, 7 games as well.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a hard fought game as well. But out of all three other teams left,
Hmm.
T-Wolves are who I want to face, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. So, I'll take it.
Hmm.
I think the way Draymond played against Sengun
Hmm.
in the last series,
Yeah.
if he does that to Gobert, I think that eliminates Gobert.
Yeah, it
I
does.
think that is going to be a great matchup.
Hmm.
I'm really excited for that one, but I am excited to see how we guard Anthony Edwards, of
Hmm.
course. You know, you we GB2, hopefully he comes back,
Hmm.
from his illness that he had in game 7, couldn't unfortunately play. Hopefully he can step up well,
Hmm.
but Steph in with GP2 not being there, his
Hmm.
defense was
Yeah, it
incredible in that
was.
game 7. And
Yeah.
the boards that he was getting, he had a double double.
Yeah.
It's unheard of how many rebounds he had. So, Steph, you know, really came through. He was even it was a Buddy Hield game.
Hmm.
Buddy came out to play.
Yes.
That dude had I think 33 on the night. Jimmy Butler plays great defense as
Hmm.
well. So, we can lock down the perimeter.
Hmm.
I think one thing I was talking about with Evan and Chris,
Hmm.
in the family is I was talking about Dante DiVincenzo. I guess he's made of Hulk strength, the way he can take out LeBron
Oh
James.
yeah.
I guess sprain his MCL as well.
Yes.
So you got to be careful. Evidently he has,
Yeah.
superhuman strength.
Hmm.
So, that's a big deal. Um, but, I think that this is going to be, like you said, it's going to be 6, 7 games.
Hmm.
I'm really interested to see how, the game 1 goes tomorrow night.
Hmm.
It's a quick turnaround for the Dubs. It's only
Yeah.
what is that? A 1 day break,
Yeah. One
and
day break. Hmm.
barely finished yesterday night, and then here they are. And
Yeah.
it could be a good factor though. Sometimes if
Yeah.
there's too much wait time,
Hmm.
you're not game ready quite as much. I feel like,
Hmm.
and maybe it's a slow start. But again, I respect Anthony Edwards.
Yeah.
I think he's an incredible player. He's really fun to watch. So
Yes.
let's see.
Yeah. Yeah. Anthony Edwards, like his style, like him, enjoyed, like I say, don't, I'm not trying to make fun of the Laker fans, because like I say, my team
It's okay.
lost. We're out of the playoffs. It's fine. It happens. But the way he was walking the street, sort of
Oh,
mocking
I love
the
it.
the players, great guy, because like I say, that's that banter that you have in sports, the banter, on the rocks that we have, with our buddies, us, whoever comments, and it's so great to see. So I'm curious how he plays, how the Timberwolves play. Um, Curious to see what Timberwolves do to stop Steph, because like I say, I think that's going to be the big factor for them winning is keeping Steph under control, not letting him have big games. And then seeing who steps up. Because like I say, Jimmy Butler, I think, has stepped up, but you need someone else. Is it going to be Pods? Is it going to be Buddy Hield? Is it going to be Draymond?
Mhm.
Who's the other one? I think Moody.
Moody,
Moody played.
Kaminga might get some minutes.
Kaminga.
GP2, the way he was in game 6, or
Yeah,
what was that?
I think 5.
Game 5,
Yeah.
the fourth quarter he had was
Hmm.
incredible.
Yeah, yeah. So like I say, and it's the same thing for Minnesota. It's like Anthony Edwards, he's gonna get his, but who's gonna step up? Is it gonna be Nas Reed? Is it gonna be DiVincenzo? Is it gonna be Nikhil, there's so many players. It's like who's next to step up? Mike Conley's on the Timberwolves, and that guy is a journeyman and great
Ancient.
veteran. So
Yeah. Naz
yeah,
Reid too.
Naz Reid.
He's a what is he, a stretch four?
Hmm.
He's got height but can, be a perimeter
Should
player as well.
yeah. Yeah, so it's gonna be a tough battle, and sort of staying with the West, and I think some of the big news with the Minnesota Timberwolves, they eliminated the Lakers. Lakers were once the Luka Doncic trade happened, I think a lot of people had them winning this whole championship. LeBron and Luka were gonna be unstoppable, and you know they got smacked. No other way to put it. And Laker fans can be mad that I'm saying it, but they got smacked, by only winning one game. It was a gentleman's sweep that Minnesota did. They gave the Lakers one game. Um, but I think the big question for you, Tim, is who's to blame for this Lakers loss and this Lakers lost this badly? Because like I say, if they would have lost in 7 games, I don't think we'd be talking about them the way we are, and the way everybody is, but they lost in 5. So who do you sort of put some of the blame on?
Mm, so number one, I think Luca's defense, and I
Hmm.
think that's a big Nico Harrison win, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Uh, I think he could breathe a little sigh of relief with his comments about saying that, defense wins championships
Hmm.
and Luca wasn't a part of that because the blow by rate that the
Yeah.
T-Wolves had on him was like, you could make a montage of it. It was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Conditioning is truly a factor there with
Hmm.
Luca. His defense is costly.
Hmm.
LeBron, he's obviously 40. He steps up when he has to. We had some great clips from last week, John, about LeBron and LaQueen. Um, it was kind of a shocker to see this story about his MCL, I believe.
Hmm.
Straining that, you know, not something you want to see, obviously. He came
Hmm.
back and continued to play in the game, so it was just kind of surprising to see
Yeah.
that, that was a report. But LeBron, you can put a little bit of weight on him. Obviously, he's a key factor no matter
Hmm.
what. But I think arguably maybe the biggest thing is JJ Redick.
Hmm.
JJ. I respect him as a coach. I think he was the right decision for the Lakers in all
Hmm.
honesty. I think he's it. But, what it comes down to is, obviously he had a press conference that came off really childish,
Yeah.
and the way he walked out on a pretty normal question,
Hmm.
talking about substitutions, if he consults his assistants, as he
Hmm.
probably should. Um, he turned that into like, oh, why? Do you not trust me to make the decisions? And, of course I talk with them, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't want to be told, what's right, what's wrong. But I think it's a valid question because some of his substitutions were iffy. And I think
Yeah.
that proved to be a big factor in that final game when you have Gobert rebounding. I think he had like, what, 22 rebounds,
Yeah,
23
I think
rebounds?
one of those
Just
games. I'm like
absolutely dominated.
yeah, they Minnesota won one game because of Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, exactly. And then they
Yeah,
put Rui on him the whole game.
yeah.
And then this is where that Mark Williams thing, that trade falling through butchered a
Hmm.
ton because they had
It
no
did.
big. We talked about that.
Hmm.
It's you don't have bigs. Small ball doesn't
Hmm.
work that well at times. If you can't
Yeah,
run it right. And I that's my biggest complaint with the Warriors a lot of times too is
yeah.
like why are we going small here?
Hmm.
We need somebody to rebound a little bit against so and
Yeah,
so. But it proved to be a factor. It
yeah.
really did.
No, yeah, it did. I agree with all your points. Luca, his defense conditioning. Um, I blame a little bit of that. I think LeBron. Like I said, I'm not saying I'm a LeBron hater. LeBron may never come on our podcast, never want to talk to us because of all the stuff we talk about
Oh
him. But
man.
he also he needs to take some of this blame because as a superstar, you have to take, all the shots. You have to take ownership for when your team loses. Like I said, but the Clippers were blaming James Harden because he didn't show up. LeBron didn't show up to some of these games that he probably should have. Um, JJ Redick. I always question the hiring of JJ Redick. I don't know if he's made out to be coach. I know he's
Hmm.
buddies with LeBron, and rumor has it that that's one of the reasons he might have gotten the position. Um, but w one of the people I sort of blame is Rob Pelinka. I think the team he has developed, because I think it always starts with the GM. It's Rob Pelinka's fault. And you mentioned one of the points, not the Mark Williams trade falling through. Why it fell through, there was a lot of controversy that the Lakers didn't want it to happen. The failed, medical test, whatever it was, wasn't really true. Mark Williams was healthy, he was ready, he was excited to join. Um, I truly think Rob Pelinka, a lot of people heard the rumblings and people mad that they traded Dalton Connect because, like I said,
Hmm.
Dalton Connect was supposed to be the next superstar. He played great during the regular season. Playoffs, didn't see him much, you
No,
know.
that sucks.
So, it's sort of like, did he make the right choice, by keeping Dalton Connect just because people were asking for his head and why did he trade him? Um, but the other reason is he had a press conference after, and now he's GM and what is it, VP of basketball operations too, or president? Like,
Correct. Yeah.
so and during the press conference, I think what just sort of for me is sort of like not the approach you have to take, and especially with a player like LeBron James, he sort of put it out there that he's gonna sort of develop a team around LeBron James. And you mentioned it. LeBron James is 40 years old. He's not the young LeBron James anymore. Still an amazing player, still could do a lot, but he shouldn't be the focal point of developing a team. He should sort of be that co-star to help a team win, based off someone else. um, you know, develop it around Luca because, like I say, Luca's younger. Luca's going to be there after LeBron James. So how are you going to help Luca's game and just stick LeBron James somewhere, And that's where defense would have, more defensive players where Mark Williams could have helped. So I put a lot of the blame on Rob Pelinka, his decisions of listening. I'm not going to say listening to LeBron because I don't know if he really listened to LeBron. I think he does, but developing a team around LeBron instead of Luca, you know, focus on what LeBron maybe wanted, what he shared, and not Luca.
That's a good point. And I think the tides are turning, to be honest with you, John. I saw a clip of course, like TMZ paparazzi.
Hmm.
They were out at a steakhouse. I think it's called Craig's over there
Hmm.
in WeHo, West Hollywood of LA. And it was a dinner meeting with Palinka, JJ, and Luca. So maybe are
Maybe,
the
maybe.
tides turning? You know, it's
Hmm.
like, are they consulting him saying, hey, passing of the torch. This is your team now, Luca. Who do you want? What are we doing this
Yeah,
off season? Do they, we'll get into Giannis.
yeah,
Who knows? But,
yeah.
I was going to have the question of, to you, John, d does Luca stay?
Um, if they develop around him and if they're doing what might be happening with what TMZ sort of reporting, they're passing the torch to Luca, I think he does. I think he does because, like I say, Luca knows what his weaknesses are and what the team needs. He took the Mavericks to the championship, last year with Kyrie, and with solid big men, not superstars. So he knows what it takes to take a team far, in the playoffs now. Compared to LeBron, last time he was in the finals was 2020, like I say, the Mickey Mouse Championship. So,
Hmm.
and it's very different. So I think he stays. I If I was Pelinka, I'd see what I could get for LeBron James and build around Luca. Like I say, if I have to trade LeBron James for Giannis, I would do it in a heartbeat. If the Bucks call me, we'll give you Giannis, give us LeBron, and Dalton Connect. Gladly, I will do that immediately. If for the Clippers, they give James Harden, and Norman Powell for Giannis. Take them. Give me Giannis with Kawhi. We're going to be unstoppable, on that defensive end.
Easy money, yeah. I
Yeah.
think anything with Giannis. I mean, it's super enticing.
Yeah.
I've talked to long about my Warriors hopefully doing something with Giannis
Hmm.
as well. He's a big name coming up here, and just imagine sending LeBron to Milwaukee to finish out his career. Like what a dud that would be.
Yeah.
But kind of a second part here with another question regarding LeBron and the
Hmm.
Lakers and Luca for you, John. And to kind of set it up, you know, LeBron, he kind of left the season off like he did, I think, last year and the year
Hmm.
before, where he's not saying if he's going to play again. He's
Hmm.
undecided about his future, blah, blah, blah. We all know he's going to have a final tour of,
Hmm.
farewells from every arena. And,
Hmm.
he's going to go out with a big bang, and quite frankly, probably should, because
Hmm.
it's a very storied career. Nothing against him.
Yeah.
But, if that's the case, and then of course he's going to be passing the baton off of, to Luca. I'm sure he would have loved it to be Bronny, but it's going to be Luca, with the Lakers. Should Luca stay?
Yeah.
Does LeBron call Luca this offseason and be like, "Hey man, come over and work out. Get on my regimen." You think he does that, and do you think Luca would say yes?
I don't think he does that, and I don't think Luca would say yes. I
Wow.
think they're butting heads, honestly. I think they're both two
Oh,
superstars. They both have two different ideas of how to condition it. And like I say, and like we've talked about, you Luca's conditioning needs to be better. His defense needs to be better. But just because he has some weight doesn't make him a superstar. Look at Jokic. That
yep.
guy isn't Giannis built. He isn't LeBron built, but he's as great or better than both of those players at the moment, So it's more about that mindset. And like I say, I think what Luca needs is just that supporting cast to back up his deficiencies, which is his defense a bit. He needs those perimeter players and those big guys to sort of catch all of those people that pass him. Because if he had people stopping him, they would stop, get the board, pass it to Luca, and then Luca would do his magic on the offensive side. So I don't think they would. I think, and honestly, what I think LeBron should do, if this is going to be his last year, I'm curious to see how the Cavs end up, and we'll talk a little bit about the East predictions. If the Cavs could get past this round and even make it to the finals, and if they could keep that core team, I think LeBron should take a discounted hometown deal, go to Cleveland, have his final tour, and possibly win a championship if they make it far. Because he could be that missing piece to sort of just help that team get past that hump of Celtics, Pacers, Knicks, one of these teams.
Yeah, I could see that happening as well. We talked jersey retirements last week,
Yeah.
and you know, again, that's his humble beginnings.
Hmm.
He's always a kid from Akron, so
Hmm.
seeing him go back there, I think that's super legitimate.
Hmm.
I think it's maybe a definite, possibility. And I kind of like your take there, John, of butting heads with
Hmm.
Luca and LeBron, different visions, maybe. And maybe this meeting that they had with JJ and Palinka was, obviously there is a void there with
Hmm.
Luca's defense, and like you
Yeah.
said, it look at Joker.
Yeah.
He's a bigger frame, so that obviously helps him with defense.
Yeah.
But the people he has around him
Hmm.
helps tremendously.
Yeah.
It's the factor. There's a lot to the Lakers that's good, but
Hmm.
then there's a lot to them that needs help
Hmm.
severely.
Yes.
It's other bigs. It's
Hmm.
shooters that they can rely on. Obviously this is Dalton Connect's first year, and you'd expect a little bit more playing time, even with it being his first year. But,
Hmm.
there's things that they can certainly work on, and, that's what we'll, hopefully see for the Lakers in this
Yeah.
offseason. But, let's see what happens with LeBron. Your Cleveland take. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
We'll run with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I think he should do if this is going to be his last year. But like I say, this is just me talking, me. and just what I think would be great for LeBron. Because like I say, I'm not a LeBron James fan like some of these commenters we've had that are truly LeBron lovers. Not a LeBron hater either. I know he's one of the greatest, not my GOAT. We talked about it last week. I got
No,
MJ and Kobe above LeBron, but still, generational player, has done amazing things for the teams he's played in the NBA. But I think a farewell tour with Cleveland would be a nice little ending for him. Um, so we'll see. And I think last little piece with you sort of mentioned it, Dallas and Nico. Good move now, I think. I think
yeah,
if Kyrie would have stayed healthy, Anthony would have been healthy, the team just would have stayed healthy, they would have gotten past Memphis, and I think they would have challenged OKC in that first round, and they could be in the second round right now against, Denver. They may struggle versus Denver, but they could have made it pretty far.
definitely. Yeah, we I kind of made the joke of Dallas, like, oh, imagine if they go on a run here and then they get blown out by the Grizzlies. But yeah, Nico, there is a somewhat of a bright side to this all.
Mhm.
I don't think Dallas fans will ever see it that way, to be honest with you.
No.
I don't think that Nico will ever be able to live it down, but I think that this is a small sigh of relief, like I
Mhm.
mentioned, for Nico,
Yeah.
with this early exit, all the blow bys that,
Hmm.
Luca had in that final game against the Wolves, it kind of proved his point that he's
Hmm.
an absolute liability on defense,
Yeah.
and that was a major factor in their loss to the Celtics last
Hmm.
season. And it's continuing to play true, but again, it's like develop more around him.
Hmm.
Help him out a little
Yeah.
bit. Don't blame everything necessarily on him, but that's just what happens when
Hmm.
you're a superstar. So, altogether though, Nico just needs to redeem himself,
Yeah.
from here on out. This is a small win for him, but he needs to do something this offseason to prove like,
Hmm.
hey, yeah, we're gonna go get so and so. His defense is
Yeah.
gonna prove to be great. Here's a good offensive threat, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
Go from there.
Yeah.
That's his only way out. And this is a
Yeah.
small victory for him, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Small victory for him. I think if next year they make the playoffs and they could get further than the Lakers, I think some of the fans may be okay with it. And I think that's sort of the other thing with fans. And like I said, for me as a fan as well, when some of these big name players get traded, we got to trust that it's for a reason. I didn't like losing Blake Griffin. I didn't like losing CP3, Baron Davis. I didn't like losing Shea, but we did it for a reason, and we just got to roll with it and hope it helps and our team wins. Unfortunately, Clippers were still I haven't won a championship, but hopefully soon. So Dallas, stay hopeful that it works out, and you can still root on Luca if you're a Luca fan, but still support your hometown team if that's what it is. But yeah, I think round two predictions. West wise, I have Denver winning it. I think they're still my dark horse to get out of the West. And Minnesota, Golden State. I'm gonna go Minnesota.
I respect it. Minnesota's a phenomenal team.
Yeah.
It's, I'm kind of pissed off right now, but it's a phenomenal team. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's good. It's good for the show.
Yeah.
Banter. But yeah, this West matchup is my banter is my banter. My dark horse versus my favorite in the West.
Hmm.
It's Nuggets versus, the favorite that I had, the Thunder.
Hmm.
Kind of changing my mind here. It's like Nuggets look really good.
Yeah.
The victory they had tonight was great. You know, I too kind of have a feeling it's going to be the Nuggets, and I think this experience is going to
Hmm.
prove that that it can push them through.
Hmm.
And Jokic, he's just a beast. So
Yeah.
he just destroys everybody else on this,
Hmm.
in that series. So. Yeah, I'll go that with them. And then, of course, gonna rock with my Warriors. It will be in 6 or 7. I don't think it's an easy blow by for any team, no
Mm-mm.
matter what.
No.
But I do like this matchup. This is the matchup I wanted.
Hmm.
Again, this is the matchup the Warriors want when we're this far in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, and this is where experience proves true.
Hmm.
Anthony Edwards. I know he's been deep in the playoffs before,
Yeah.
but so has the Warriors, obviously,
Hmm.
with their four rings that we have in
Hmm.
recent memory. So,
Yeah.
gonna go Dubs in six.
Nice. Okay.
In rock with that. But I respect the Wolves. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I respect.
No, no, for sure. And I think every round you've always been happy who you face next. Who would you prefer out of Denver, OKC?
Uh-oh. OKC.
OKC. That's what I
Easily.
thought.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. Yes. Denver's a threat.
Yeah.
They're both a threat,
Yeah.
but Denver is just
Denver's a tough one. I think that
yes.
I think OKC, you guys would be able to manage that team
Yep.
easily with your experience, just like you did Houston. But I think Denver, Joker would just be a tough one.
Absolutely. Yeah, even for guys like Dre, like
Hmm.
it's just his vision's insane. But Steph has fond memories of
Yeah.
beating OKC in the playoffs. So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then East, we have Cavaliers versus the Pacers, and then Celtics versus the Knicks. Um, I'm sort of in that dilemma with the East right now. And my
Yep.
favorites versus my dark horse, Celtics versus the
Yeah.
Knicks. Knicks won today. They pulled it off in OT. Um, I don't know. It's either I'm gonna get in trouble for what I'm gonna say. I'll be in good graces for what I say because Vera listens to the
Yeah.
show. Um,
Good content, John.
yeah, and like
For
I
the
say,
pod.
I'm so torn because I like the Knicks. Jalen Brunson has played well. Um, but I think Celtics are still gonna pull it off, but I think it's gonna go deep. I think this is gonna go 7 game series. But if the Knicks win, I'm not gonna be sad. I'm gonna be in trouble for saying this, but I will be excited because I think the Knicks will make it to the finals if they win this series. Um, so I think this one goes 6-7, most likely 7. And again, Boston with Boston winning it in Boston is my prediction. And then Cavs, Pacers. I think we talked about it last week. OKC, Cavs, very little experience. I think they're gonna buckle under the pressure. Their first round was the easy one. Pacers are playing amazingly. We'll see how they do. I'm not the biggest Pacer fan, honestly. I don't. I'm surprised they made it this far. I think if Giannis had Dame the whole time, Giannis and the Bucks would have gotten through. Uh, but I think Pacers will pull this off. Let me
Mhm.
say, I'm not the biggest Halliburton fan. You know, his daddy might come at me for saying that, but I've never been the biggest
Yeah.
Hallie fan. Great player, but don't think he's a superstar. I think he's a great role player and a great distributor. But star, I wouldn't put him in that category, but I think the Pacers are going to pull this one off in
Yeah,
6.
Halliburton's dad, that was too much. Yeah, that was wild. And I guess his dad's a ref.
Is he?
I don't
Oh,
yeah, I don't know what level, but I maybe pro. I don't know.
maybe.
But yeah, his dad, yeah,
Mhm.
he should know better than to
Yeah.
do that. But anyways, uh as far as I'll start off with the Cleveland Pacers. You took Pacers in six. I like it, but I'm gonna go Cavs in six. I know that there's inexperience, but their coach has experience.
Hmm.
He was a assistant coach with the Warriors. Um, Tremendous coach. I think I'm not overly surprised because we saw what Mike Brown was fired too soon with the
Yeah.
Kings. That was some BS. But he was incredible. Obviously, Mike Brown had a history before then, but
Hmm.
I just think that coaching tree with Steve Kerr, whether it's a rejuvenation
Yeah.
career or just getting put out there. So Cavs, I'm gonna go Cavs in six. I think that there's great elements there. Their bigs are so good.
Yeah.
And it's a deep team. It's a threat. Donovan Mitchell's incredible, but the
Hmm.
big factor, which is going to hurt them after this, I think a lot, is that Garland injury.
Hmm.
I believe it's his toe. if I'm not
Hmm.
mistaken. I guess if it was regular season, he'd be missing considerable time.
Yeah.
Obviously, playoffs are going to try to rush him back a little bit, but yeah, that's going to play a factor. Garland's incredible. He's a
Hmm.
difference maker for that team. So, and I think that was proven true already in this
Hmm.
series. So, close game so far. It's going to go six, maybe seven, but I'll stick with the Cavs. I
Okay.
believe in them. They won a lot this year. And
Hmm.
then Knicks Celtics. This is such a good series.
It is.
It was tonight was super exciting. I only caught like the final minutes of the fourth and then OT, just because of when I got off with work. But just even Brunson. I mean, just lights out. Clutch player of the year.
Hmm.
Just proved it.
Yes.
He kind of a little bit of some self implosion there. Exciting team. It's that factor of like, Celtics were my favorite. I'm gonna stick with the Celtics, but like you said, it's gonna be a long series. I'm gonna go Celtics in seven,
Hmm.
and then yeah, but I do kind of change my tune with them against the West. But Celtics in seven, they're really deep. Porzingis
Yeah.
didn't play much tonight, and I think that made
Yeah.
a difference. So if he gets healthier from his illness,
Hmm.
that'll be a big factor.
Yeah. No, it'll be a big factor. And honestly, the Celtics, they missed 45 threes today. They were just
Mhm.
shooting threes and
That's outrageous.
they kept it close. So that shows that
Yeah.
they're still a great team. If the shots are hitting, they would have blown out the Knicks. It would have been a
Yeah.
whole different story. So we'll just see. I think they need to win game two to sort of bring it back. And yeah, Porzingis is going to be a big factor. But yeah, I think this is probably I have this the best game of round two, Celtics Knicks, and then I
Hmm.
think I'm excited honestly to see Warriors Timberwolves. I think that's going to be a hard fought series as well.
No doubt, Steph is all over the court. It's going to be a really fun one. I'm really
Hmm.
excited about that one. So yeah, these playoffs are great though.
Yeah.
I think that all of these are going to be good battles. A lot more competitive, obviously,
Hmm.
than the last go around. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's NBA playoffs. Like I say, well, we'll continue covering it. Tim still has his team to root on. I'm
so
rooting on a few other teams now, but still watching it because, like I say, it's when I really enjoy watching basketball. But we'll sort of switch sports a little bit, and we're not gonna go football, like pro football. We're gonna go into a little bit of college football and not even college players or college coaches. We're gonna go talk a little bit about Jordan. I hear people say Jordan Hudson,
I think
right?
it's Jordan. Yes.
Jordan Hudson. So this is Bill Belichick's girlfriend. Um, and it's really big news recently because Bill Belichick was on an interview, Sunday morning interview, I think it was like April 27th. And during the interview, Jordan was sort of telling Bill what he could and couldn't talk, sort of like that, PR manager, and a lot of people had questions of how she is controlling Bill Belichick. I think there was also news reports, like I say, I don't know how accurate it is, but that she also canceled Hard Knocks covering, North Carolina, college football for Hard Knocks this year, which would have been a
Hmm.
pretty cool thing to see college football and Hard Knocks because I don't remember seeing that before. So would have
Yeah.
been great. But I think one of the first questions for you, Tim, Bill Belichick's girlfriend, good or bad for him?
Uh, certain aspects, I'm sure it's great. I'm
Yeah.
sure, I'm sure he's living it, But other aspects, it's not good. It's just as an outsider, obviously, we're not in touch with the Belichick
Hmm.
family. But just between the interview and the stories that are coming out, and just even like her reaction in that recent interview,
Hmm.
like I think the question was like, "Oh, how'd you guys meet?" Something
Hmm.
simple. And
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh, we're not answering that. We're not talking
Yeah.
about that." And just seeing her in the back of the room, kind of talk like that,
Hmm.
and go off. It's not good.
Hmm.
I think that it comes off just weird. a
Hmm.
little off, controlling for
Yeah.
sure. And, that's one thing. And then you read about this $8 million in real estate that
Hmm.
she's, come into owning.
Yeah.
And, it's obviously the Belichick fortune is absolutely there. Um, but I mean, good for her. Real estate's a
Mhm.
smart investment.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a bad thing. But that and then, just her the PR standpoint, like
Hmm.
is this good PR for something? Isn't it a book that they're promoting? If
Yeah,
I'm not wrong.
a
Yeah.
book, Belichick's
Yeah.
book.
It's is this good? Is like, maybe fuck, maybe I'll go buy it. I don't know.
Yeah, you
I
know.
need to read a little bit more. Why not?
Yeah.
It's out there, and then, behind closed doors, they're like, yeah, my antics worked, and then,
Hmm.
see how that's how it's done. And, but today I read that he's looking for possibly an outside PR person now. So,
Hmm.
it's maybe he's not too thrilled about it. Maybe he is, there's some alarms being raised. I know his
Hmm.
family has spoken out a little bit about it recently.
Hmm.
Um, maybe that's a little iffy too. But overall, I'm gonna say bad so far. I think it's interesting. And it's PR for maybe the wrong reasons right now.
Hmm.
But what do you think, John?
Yeah, like you, I can't really say good or bad. I think I'm gonna lean more bad and more because of what's come out. And like you mentioned, I think more bad because why is she really involving herself in a lot of this when Bill Belichick, I think he's of sound mind, and knows what he's doing. So and
Hmm.
he's been a professional with the Patriots for so many years, so he knows how to go through interviews. He knows what he should and shouldn't talk about. Um, so why include her in so much? Why did he do it? So him now looking for PR probably sort of to protect her if he truly is in love with Jordan. And but yeah, all the reports, it's just like, man, this is crazy. The real estate thing I saw too, I was like, man, like good for her. She's investing smart, money. Um, if it's hers, if it's Belichick's money, who knows? I saw something today that says the Belichick kids are hope he's making a good choice. But it's sort of, I think that where we're all at, it's like he's an adult, he knows what he's doing,
Yeah.
and he's getting himself into this. So if he's making a bad choice, the only person to blame is himself. There's nobody else to blame. Jordan, she, I hope she isn't taking advantage. I hope she's sort of being smart and also just trying to help him and help herself, which kudos to her, nothing against that. But, you know, I think I'd blame more Belichick of just his decisions of letting her be involved in so much of these decision-making things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's a sound mind.
Yeah.
Obviously, North Carolina hired him for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's totally relevant. And if he's
Mm.
allowing her to, I don't, did she have just a genuine curiosity, if you might
Mhm.
know, I don't know if she had a built up net worth prior to meeting Belichick?
I'm not aware. I haven't really looked too deep into it, so I'm not too sure
Sure.
how much. But I think she probably did because, like I say, I don't think Belichick would have just gone with someone randomly that he met in the airplane that didn't have some sort of knowledge of his net worth or even her own net worth. So
Sure.
I don't think it's Belichick money, but might be up there.
Yeah, and say he's helping with it. Again, I think real estate's a great investment. I think
Yeah,
everybody thinks that.
yeah,
So, it's not like it's really a bad thing. At least she's spending it on that and not
yeah,
like, something else that's crazy,
yeah,
God knows. But it's so okay. That's
yeah.
that's obviously a story though. Um, and then you know, I just maybe more than anything, it's probably just the way that she came off
Hmm.
in the interview. Didn't she leave for like 30 minutes or
Yeah.
something and then comes back?
Hmm.
It just kind of, it threw things off and wasn't really the story that you were hoping to come out of doing an interview like
Hmm.
that. Which, kind of leads me to something that's actually becoming a lot more relevant between whether it's the Hard Knocks
Hmm.
cancellation and all this stuff. And I definitely want to ask you this, John.
Hmm.
Do you think he actually coaches a game for North Carolina?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. I think he'll be on the sideline. I think he's gonna recruit, but I think he's gonna have the assistant coaches, the coordinators do most of the coaching, and he's just gonna be that NIL figure. He's that
Mm,
signing that they got to get those players there. Because like I say, as say I was a college student trying to figure out my team, and Bill Belichick came to my house and says, "I want you to be starting running back, starting wide receiver for my team. Look at what I've done in the NFL. I know how to get you there. You're gonna sign up for that team." No
yep.
doubt about it because of that name. After his first few years, people are gonna know if it really is him, what he's doing, so it might drop down, but for the first 2, 3 years, he's going to get a lot of high recruits because of his name. So I think that's why North Carolina paid him. And I think Bill Belichick knows that too. I'm here for a paycheck. I'm going to set up my team, set up the coaches, and I'll do plays here and there, but they're going to do most of the work.
Makes sense. It's a big name, good recruiting
Hmm.
factor, all the NIL stuff going on. Makes
Yeah.
sense. Um, and then yeah, I'm kind of on the same page with you. It's yeah, he's there for that, and then I'm kind of curious to see how just the coaching overall goes.
Hmm.
And does that throw off some players after a
Yeah.
while? That's going to be another thing. And then I was thinking about it too, John. Obviously, he didn't get a chance in the NFL recently. There's plenty of
Mm-mm.
openings, just never
Yeah.
got one. Was he with his girlfriend Jordan at that point in time, or were they not together yet?
I
Do you
don't
happen
I
to
don't
know?
think they were official. I think they knew each other and they were
Okay,
probably communicating, but you
sure.
know, I think one of the reasons, or I can't really say this is a reason, but Brady winning a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, I think hurt Belichick's um, credit in the NFL because Brady did it without him, and
Valid.
it
Yep.
was always a talk. Who's the one winning the Super Bowls? Is it Brady? Is it Belichick? And
Yep.
Belichick couldn't do anything without Brady. Brady did it without him. So I think that sort of hurt his stock in the
Yep.
NFL. And I think, like I say, for college, people still he knows how to develop players. He found Brady. He found
Yeah.
Gronk. He found Edelman. He found a lot of players he drafted. So he knows what caliber type of player you need to be. So I think for college, he could be great.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. No, I
Yeah.
completely agree. I just was wondering if that was maybe a factor at some point, but
Yeah.
hey, yeah, maybe it's just a bigger story and it needs to be overall with
Yeah.
Jordan, but it's raising eyebrows.
It
Just
is.
that interview turned
Yeah.
a direction that I don't think
Yeah.
anybody anticipated. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And like I say, if you read that Belichick is already looking for PR firms, I think it's the best route for both of them. I think Jordan could still support Belichick, but let the PR firm take care of everything so it doesn't come from you because it's just not a good look for her to be
yeah,
making decisions, especially when it comes out publicly like that. So,
for
um,
sure.
but yeah, and sort of, I think sort of off topic, but with NIL, um, Sacramento State going to be the next big powerhouse,
Oh,
you think?
easy.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, they're on a tear, dude. It's crazy. Just getting Mikey Williams, to join Mike Bibby on the Sac State,
Yeah.
basketball team now.
Hmm.
Didn't they get Shaquille O'Neal's son?
Shaquille O'Neal, yeah.
I mean, they're
And now
reeling it in,
Shaq.
then is going to be an NIL endorser, right?
Hmm.
So, I don't know how this startup happened. I think I read a comment somewhere that said like, th they were cutting a lot of like student money or something. And then they're like, let's
Maybe.
put it in fucking sports, raise money that
Yeah.
way. But Sac State of all schools, like,
Hmm.
and then they're making moves in football. Didn't they get a five-star recruit
I
at
think so.
quarterback over there?
Yeah.
Like, man, they're just pulling out all the stops and
Yeah.
hey, kind of local to me. I don't mind
That's
it. I think
good.
it's pretty cool. Maybe I'll go try to catch a game this,
Yeah,
season if it's basketball, football, whatever. But uh, I mean, good for them. I think
yeah.
that's cool. And then maybe is this going to start a trend? Is
I
another
think it is.
thought too, John.
I,
Right?
I, I
NIL is a big deal.
yeah, I think it is, and I'm surprised Shaq did it with Sacramento State because LSU would have taken him back quickly and paid
Oh
him
yeah.
a bunch of money. So why
Yep.
Sacramento State? I think it's awesome. Um, it reminds me of sort of how Oregon was in a big program, and now look at them, because of
Yep.
the what they developed there, and now with NIL money, it's going to be what names you get to your school, So, I think Hawaii needs to start spending some of this money because you'll get a lot of people going out to Hawaii if you
Oh
have some sort
yeah.
of Shaquille O'Neal type caliber player.
It's a vibe. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Get like Paul Malu out there or
Oh,
something,
yeah.
It'd
Yeah.
be badass. Hell yeah. Get
Yeah.
that.
You'll have the best hair in Hawaii for your sports
Oh,
team.
yeah, Head and Shoulders. Just get them out there, let them sponsor everybody. Everybody's
Yeah.
got a good set of hair out there. So, that's a big deal. And, Bibby coming back to Sacramento, man, it's killer.
Mhm.
But I do think it's going to start a trend.
Yeah.
It has to,
Yeah.
and then it becomes like, you just have all these random schools, getting celebrity kids or
Yeah.
coaches to come and, we mentioned it with assistant coaches even.
Mhm.
Andrew Luck or assistant GMs, I should say, or
Yeah.
GMs. Andrew Luck with
Hmm.
Stanford, Curry with Davidson.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you name it. So
Yeah.
it's going to happen. It's going to expand. It's kind of fun in a weird way.
Hmm.
But then it's just going to throw off all the conferences a ton.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's good. I remember that when you mentioned NIL, and that's what Belichick started doing. Shaq is a big move for Sacramento State.
Yeah, that guy owns so many companies now, or at
Yeah.
least has a stake in it. Yeah,
Uh, is it,
the general.
like I say, he just needs to put all his companies into sponsorships there, and he'll make even more money, just having them on the logos.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, easy money, but
Uh,
that's really cool. Yeah, man, his kids grew up fast. I
mhm.
remember Sharif seeing his high school highlights, and
Yeah.
he went to LSU, and then his
Well,
younger brother was coming up, but now his younger brother's now
mm-hmm.
um, the one going to Sac
Yeah.
State, right?
Sac
So,
State. Yeah.
man, imagine Bryce does not go to Arizona, and he decides to go over to um,
Maybe.
Sac State too.
Yeah.
Mike Bibby.
Like I
I
say,
don't know.
LeBron going to Akron,
Oh,
being right
Akron
there.
University. Right? Yeah.
Akron's already a pretty good, basketball team. They're always, not top ranked in, March Madness, but always there competing and getting LeBron there. You're gonna get a lot more high, 4 or 5 star recruits.
Definitely.
So
Yeah,
we'll see.
totally. Could
Yeah.
be fun for these guys after their playing careers,
Hmm.
to start developing something and
Yeah.
building a franchise almost. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, it'll be good. But yeah, that's a little bit about Jordan Hudson, some NIL talk. Next, it's this question I threw out to you, Tim. So this week I saw a video where Adam Scott, and I think it's an older video. I don't think it's new. But
Yeah, a
he
couple of
was,
years.
yeah,
I
but
remember
he
seeing it.
was with Kristen Kristen Bell, where she was covering for Jimmy Kimmel. And Adam Scott was sort of talking about having invited Mark Hamill from Star Wars to his second birthday party as a kid, and then Mark Hamill comes out, sort of surprises him. I think we both said it, the just a genuine excitement and how happy Adam Scott was seeing Mark Hamill show up and sort of mention it. Really, he was happy about it, and Mark Hamill too, just great with it, making jokes about why he couldn't show up, and made me think, and sort of brought it to you as a question for you and also a question for our listeners, who would be 3 people you would invite to your birthday party as a kid? So, between the ages, let's say 5, 4 to like 8. So, as a kid, who would be someone you would invite, hoping they would show up, even though we know most likely they wouldn't. And I could start one of my first ones, and I have a list, and I'll jump around, but Harrison Ford for me. Big fan of Star Wars, but big fan of Indiana Jones. Loved that movie as a kid. Him with the hat, the whip, just that, the archaeology part of him really got me into archaeology. Never really wanted to go into it as a career, but always was like, can that be interesting, because I'd be going on adventures. But once I found out what archaeology really was, I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not just gonna go dig up bones and, it's not that glamorous Indiana Jones life, but I he was someone as a kid that I looked up to. I really loved, and I would have invited him. Having him come to my party with his hat, his whip, doing some tricks would have been amazing. So I think I have Harrison Ford as one person I would have invited.
I like it. Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, Indiana Jones. Remember watching those with my with my dad. It was a ton of
Yeah.
fun. Um, first one right away. Michael Jordan. Jersey behind me, but man, Space Jam was one of my favorite movies growing up.
Mhm.
I would watch it on repeat with buddies of mine, by myself. Just that whole movie was great. Brings back a loved the Looney Tunes at the time,
Mhm.
obviously, and I was just really infatuated with all things sports, and definitely Michael Jordan was up there just because of
Mhm.
everything he did, how fun he was to watch.
Mhm.
His the collectibles around him, obviously, it's still incredible to
Yeah.
this day. Everybody wanted to be like Mike,
Mhm. The shoes.
it's the shoes, it's just
Mhm.
even his swag, if I
Yeah.
could rock like one earring the way he does, like I would fucking do it.
Yes.
But I can't. I just don't have that much swag. My aura is not
Uh,
quite there. But just I think just his presence is just
Mhm.
it'd have me awestruck.
Mhm.
It's just one of those guys. So yeah, definitely MJ would be up there
MJ.
for me.
Yeah, yeah, no, he'd be one I'd also like. Saw him growing up. One of the reasons I really did like basketball was MJ. Um,
Hmm.
my next one, Vera can't get mad over this one because I think it's everybody's crush, but Amy Jo Johnson, so the Pink Power Ranger. Um,
Okay, yeah,
I
there you
I
go.
think this was everybody's crush, so that's what I'm saying. Vera can't get mad because every boy my age at that when Power Rangers came out, that was the crush, and I think it was just enjoyed Power Rangers, dressed up as Power Rangers multiple years. I think during Halloween, watched it every morning. I remember having, I think I had the red, like little belt, and I always would go like, you know, just
Nerd. Just kidding. No, I would too. Yeah, it's so
you know.
badass.
So, but Amy Jo Johnson, I think everybody had a crush on her, and I'd be the coolest kid in the block
Yeah.
if Amy Jo Johnson came to my birthday party. So that's who I would
Oh,
have invited.
absolutely. No, that's a great choice. Yeah, Power Rangers was the shit back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great. Um, My next one's going to be Adam Sandler. He's obviously super relevant to this day,
Yeah.
but I grew up on his movies. So,
Mhm.
Billy Madison, Big Daddy, is another one I
Mhm.
love to watch. Just all of his films back in the day continued to crack me up. I just think that, his type of comedy I really enjoy. He's not for everybody, obviously, but
Mhm.
um, just those movies always really stood out to me.
Mhm.
Just even the memories of who I'd watch it with, and it was just like a different type of comedy. Billy Madison.
Yeah, Billy
I was going to
Manson.
mention an honorable mention for me was going to be Chris Farley. Obviously, he was really close with Adam,
Hmm.
from the SNL days and the movies that they developed together. But you know, Billy Madison in particular, like I would be in absolute tears, just Chris Farley as the bus driver and him eating all the kids'
Yes.
lunches,
That's
you know.
hilarious.
And then the scene where they're doing the pop quiz thing with the stripping.
Uh,
And then
that's
he got the
hilarious.
right.
I
He's like,
remember.
"That's correct." And then he takes his shirt off.
Yeah.
You know, it just hits different. His comedy was so good back in the day. It's still, there's some hit or miss times. He's
Yeah.
done some good dramas lately, but just Adam Sandler comedies back in the day, man.
Mhm.
It was top tier for me. So
Yeah.
he would definitely be up there for me.
Nice. Yeah, no, Adam Sandler, great. It would have been cool. Like as a kid, having him show up to your birthday party is just like a true,
Yeah.
almost like a true Billy Madison type of situation.
Yes,
He'd be partying
absolutely.
with the adults, but hanging out with the kids.
Hell yeah. Yeah, totally.
Uh, yeah. One of my last ones, like I say, I have a few left, but I put Kobe Bryant. And for me,
Yep.
that was, like I say, Michael Jordan was a big reason I watched basketball. But one of the reasons that I really fell in love with the game was Kobe and watching his play, his style. Um, honestly, one of the only reasons I ever rooted for the Lakers was because of Kobe. I've always been a Clipper fan because that's the games my dad first took me to, when watching basketball live. So I became a Clipper fan. But Kobe, his game, the Mamba mentality, had his jersey as a youth. One of the reasons I love the sport, his game style. I don't know if I still have the jersey. My mom might have it somewhere in storage, but I know it won't fit me because I was wearing like a small, maybe a medium back then. Now it probably fit one arm. That's about it. But Kobe Bryant, I think if I had a chance to invite him to my party and he would have shown up, same thing. I would have just gone to the courts with all the fellas and because all the fellas were around when I was a kid and just be shooting hoops with him would have been so awesome as a for a birthday party.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. God. So I had Will Ferrell written down, but that would have been like somebody for like kind of more like a teenage year
Mhm.
birthday,
Yeah.
just Will Ferrell, just the movies that he was on that little hot streak with,
Hmm.
with Talladega Nights,
Yeah.
and
Oh
all
yeah.
those Step Brothers, that was kind of like my high
Anchorman.
school days.
Hmm.
But Anchorman, of course. Um, and then but yeah, no, I feel like it's a little bit too far off. So I probably going back to sports again. I kind of think back to my Golden State Warriors back in the day, and
Hmm.
I absolutely love to watch Jason Richardson.
These are the best.
Um, Jason Richardson was so much fun, to watch.
Hmm.
He revolutionized, in my opinion, dunking.
Yeah, he did.
His through the legs 360 dunk that he did in
Hmm.
the All-Star game. I was able to see him live a couple of times, and
Hmm.
he did a 360 dunk in a game I
Oh,
watched him
nice.
against the Clippers in LA, but was rocking a Warriors jersey for that match. Uh, and just to watch him do it live was
Yeah.
insane to me. Bad Warriors teams he was on, but he was just the bright spot
Hmm.
always.
Yeah.
He had some good days with Baron Davis,
Yeah.
with the We Believe stuff. But Jason Richardson, man, he was so much fun. He was so
Mhm.
much freaking fun.
Yeah.
He would definitely be somebody that if I invited him, I had a group of buddies that we all love Jason Richardson.
Yeah.
So that would have just been insane. Like it would
Yeah.
have been so cool
That
to
would have
have
been
him.
awesome. Just watching him do dunks would have been so awesome to
Hell
just
yeah,
experience.
dude. Oh yeah, set up a basketball court and just
Yeah.
let him do his thing and we
Yeah.
just watch.
Yeah, yeah,
Throw him
yeah.
an alley oop or
Yeah,
something.
he has the normal hoop, and then you guys try to do it on the mini like kid hoops.
Straight
That would have
up.
been fun. But,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
but yeah, when you mentioned the Warriors, I was like, at first I was gonna say Baron Davis. I thought that's who you were gonna say, but Jay Rich, I think.
Yeah, Jay Rich.
Yeah.
He was number one for me. Baron
Mhm.
Davis came like a little bit later.
Yeah.
Jason was already there. So,
Yeah.
he suffered, through quite
Yeah.
some terrible Warriors teams.
He
But
did.
like I said, he was the bright spot and he was so much
Mhm.
fun to watch.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and then one of the questions I gave you today, and for myself too, is who would you invite today? If you had a birthday tomorrow, who would be that person? And for me, like I say, I think people are gonna think this is random, but for me, I'd invite Cascade. And for me, big fan of his music, love all his music, love the EDM scene, and he's one of those pioneers that I really enjoy seeing his interviews because he just seems like a genuine dude. And it'd be awesome to hang out with him because he seems like a cool guy. And then just having him DJ the party. I think having Cascade
Oh
be
yeah,
DJ
bro,
your
he's so
party,
sick.
it'd be the talk of the town. It's like a mini concert.
Yeah, yeah. Wasn't it? Just imagine. We get big one day here, John.
Yeah,
Maybe we can get Cascade
yeah,
DJing a set for us for like a
yeah,
celebration
maybe.
party one day. That'd be badass.
Yeah.
Oh, voice crack. But I don't know if you saw, but kind of viral. All American Rejects, I believe, went viral for some backyard stuff, if
hmm
I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. This past weekend,
hmm
really cool. Like
Yeah.
like they're just showing up to people's backyards and
hmm
playing and
Yeah,
rocking out.
there's a
That was
lot of people doing like those small venues, like I say, showing up to coffee shops. DRO
yeah.
showed up to a Chuck E. Cheese a few months ago. I don't know if you remember
Oh,
seeing that.
no,
Like,
that's so sick though.
yeah,
Nice.
he showed up to a Chuck E. Cheese to do a mini concert for people there, and I would have been like, man, if I would
Sick.
have known, I would have gone.
Hell yeah. Make the trip.
So mhm.
No, it's really cool. That's a great one. Cascade, yeah,
Yeah,
his music rocks. Love Cascade. Um, Modern day, can I include one main figure, but then a group of people with him?
yeah,
Steve Carell in the cast of The Office. It would make my
that would be.
day, my life. That is by far and away my favorite TV show of all
Yeah,
time. But like having them low key, like not in a weird way, get into character. It's just to have like him and Dwight,
yeah,
just kind of going at it. And just John Krasinski obviously has made a hell of
yeah.
a career out of it, and just all aspects
Mhm.
of what The Office was. Um, yeah, I would need that at a party. It would
That'd
just
be
be
awesome.
so cool, man. That I would just be asking so many stupid questions, like just about the set or like
Yeah,
filming it, and just what my favorite scenes are.
yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, Steve Carell in the Office cast,
That'd be awesome.
yeah, I would love it.
Yeah. Yeah, rent out like a real office, have them sit down, and you be like the
Dude,
new
yeah.
be the new intern.
Yeah, no, have Michael Scott, like AKA Steve Carell, like do the party for me because
Yeah.
he's into that.
Yeah.
Just have him formulate it and like have it happen, but then he like somehow makes it about him,
Yeah.
and I would be okay with it. I
Yeah.
just and then of course, Kevin would have to make his chili
Yeah.
and of course spill it and then scoop it
Spell
back
it.
in. Man,
Yeah,
yeah,
that'd be
and then
awesome.
Meredith getting drunk,
Yeah.
just Creed acting weird. Oh man, it would be
Yeah.
so good.
That'd be awesome. That'd be a good party.
Yeah.
And then just end it with the basketball court in the warehouse, the basketball
Oh,
game.
oh, now we're talking. Yes. Yes. And then yeah. Yep. And then I would join the office team and then
Yeah.
we'd go up against the warehouse guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
No, yeah. Be a good matchup.
I love that. Just side note, I love how Steve chose the team and he chose everybody bad. And then the people he didn't choose were the ones who were actually really good,
Yeah.
like Phyllis.
Phyllis, yeah.
That always cracked me up. That always
Yeah.
cracked me up.
It's hilarious. No,
Yeah.
that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one for modern day. Um, Two honorable mentions I had, just people, and this was when I was a kid. Michael J. Fox and Britney Spears, just big names, big fans of them. Big fan of Back to the Future too. So Michael J. Fox having him, in his Marty McFly outfit coming, his hoverboard, it'd be amazing.
Yeah, those Nikes, the
Yeah,
self-tying ones, those are
yeah,
so sick. Yeah,
yeah, and
man.
and then Britney Spears, just big pop star.
It's pretty bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Jen would love that one, Britney
Uh,
Spears. Yeah, honorable mention, I mentioned one, Chris Farley,
mhm.
RAP. He's by far and away one of my
Yeah.
top comedians. He cracks me up no matter what it is. Um, and then I'll go T Swift. T Swift has been like a really big part of, my
hmm
relationship with my wife, and just her songs are always really memorable and we love her concerts.
hmm
So she would be like just incredible from like just me a couple standpoint. I,
Yeah.
I think she would be so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, T Swift I'll throw in there.
Yeah. Hey, she might be Travis Kelsey and not someone else.
Super sick. I would talk a lot of shit, but like in a nice way. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think I heard Met Gala. They were both there today.
Were they?
Uh,
I've seen a bit of the Met Gala. I think the
or is
biggest
that?
thing I
Yeah. That was
I
today,
think
right?
it was today. Yeah,
Okay.
biggest news that I've heard from Vera. Haven't had a chance to really look into it. Rihanna announcing baby number three, showing up with her baby
Ah,
bump.
congratulations,
So,
Rihanna.
yeah,
Very
congrats.
cool.
I think my Coachella future with her, it might not be out of the picture just because
Ah,
she might already have the baby, but I
true.
think it's a good way to, come back to the music scene after three kids. But it'll be a tight window for her. So we'll see
Sure.
if that one comes true.
Definitely. See if Tom Holland's available.
Yeah, Tom Holland. Maybe just Tom Holland doing Rihanna's cover songs.
Hey, yeah. And that's another big thing too, is I saw like a random clip of the lip sync battle, that TV show. People are saying like bring it back. I think it was David Spade's week on there.
Okay.
That was a really good show. They should, honestly like bring it
hmm
back. That
Yeah,
was
bring
that was
it
a great
back.
show.
Yeah, I
Fun.
think people will like it. You know, give
Good
it a
TV.
little break. There's a lot of new celebrities that I think would do great at it, and bring back the old ones. New school versus old schools type of thing.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah,
Fun show.
no, very fun show. But yeah, that's sort of that birthday question. Who would you invite to your birthday party? Let us know who would be three people from when you were a kid that you would want, to show up at your birthday party and why, and even one now. Like, who would you be so excited to have at your party? So and then one of the last things I sort of wanted to talk about, we talked about movies, TV, a lot of that stuff. Um, and and like I said, even with tariffs, one article I saw that sort of shared with you today, Tim, but wanted to touch on
Hmm.
it. There's a lot of companies and brands now looking away from doing ads, and they're looking at creating like their own entertainment content, creating reality TV, and sort of integrating their products into that instead of having commercials. Um, so it's very interesting because, like I say, it's sort of seeing, maybe like Chick-fil-A making a reality TV show, and all the food is Chick-fil-A. They're promoting the new chicken sandwich, whatever they create. And it's pretty much, advertisement within a TV show where you're making money, instead of just paying for an ads, space. So, um, I thought it was very interesting. And one of the other, part of the articles that I saw was even TV shows right now sort of showing that piece because there's a new show on Apple TV called The Studio. It's with Seth Rogen. If you haven't watched it, I'll say it's not cut out for everybody, but I really do enjoy it. I think it's hilarious. I've loved watching it, but the first episode, so a little bit of a spoiler, but Seth Rogen takes over a movie production company, so he's the president. And in the first episode, he had the owner, like the person financing the production company, wants him to create a movie based off the Kool-Aid Man. And Seth Rogen really likes to create theater movies, not, more great movies, creative, original movies, and not these type of movies just for money. But the financier wants Kool-Aid. So he's sort of hitting that dilemma, and it sort of brings it to the point of, man, Kool-Aid just sort of promoted a little bit with this TV show because who's really talking about Kool-Aid as much nowadays? And now it being part of this TV show, a lot of people are probably like, okay, Kool-Aid's pretty cool. Let's get some Kool-Aid. I'm curious how much Kool-Aid has sold since the show came out. So, what do you think of companies maybe not doing as much ads and sort of taking over TV and film?
I personally, I kind of like it. I think that advertisements are things that we often just want to skip through
Yeah.
versus being like, oh wow, yeah, okay, I'm gonna go buy it because of that commercial. I love
Yeah.
watching commercials. It's like, no, it's like, you're watching the Super
Mhm.
Bowl. Well, Super Bowl's not a good example. You're
Yeah.
watching like, random NBA game,
Yeah.
baseball, NFL, whatever. You're not like you use commercial moments to like go up and get more food, get another
Yeah.
drink, go use the restroom.
Yeah.
You're not sitting there like, oh yeah, what does Arby's have right now? It's
Yeah.
like whatever. And then quite frankly, if we're talking fast food, like I'm not really paying attention to like what the new McDonald's thing is. Like I'm gonna look at that once I finally get to the drive-through
Mhm.
and I see like Chick-fil-A like right now, low key fat ass me, knows that they have a barbecue chicken sandwich right now.
Hmm. Yep.
I didn't know about that until I got there. So,
Yeah.
that's where I get my source. So
Hmm.
advertisements leaving kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's time for a change, and at least they're making the change. And then you
Hmm.
advertise through, like you said, TV shows,
Yeah.
something different. And then you make like a comedic spin on it. I don't know how they're gonna do this with Kool-Aid, but hey, I'm curious to see like where the direction is of, how much sales they get from it, because
Yeah.
being in a space where you do something a little bit different like this
Hmm.
will probably help you out a lot, and it gets
It
people
will.
talking about it in different ways. Um, so yeah, just personal standpoint, that's how I consume my advertisements is through that versus like annoyingly like push skip ad on a YouTube video or something.
Yeah. No, yeah, I don't think many people are watching ads. I think a lot of these streaming services are also sort of promoting, pay an extra $10 and you get ad-free, content. And I think a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm gonna pay an extra $10 a month to avoid all these ads and avoid having you know, to step away, because like you mentioned, with ads, I step away a lot, use the restroom, go get food, go take the dogs out, um, or even just go on my phone, look at TikToks. I'm not looking at the TV ads during these playoff series. You
Right.
know, once it goes into those commercial breaks, you don't have my attention. Once I hear like the noise of the game coming back, I'm like, okay, it's back on. Let me go sit down.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think them doing this and it's almost sort of like we talked about with actors giving NIL. These companies have to start doing NIL deals. You want to use Chick-fil-A in your video, in your movie, show Coca-Cola. They're already doing that a lot, but these unknown companies, you know, show your an alarm system, a new alarm system coming up, in a movie about robbing a home. Have that alarm system be the main one. It's the way you sort of sell.
Definitely. Yeah. If it's like an alarm system, like it could be like that movie When a Stranger Calls.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, hi, yeah, this is ADT security.
Yeah.
It's in the house. It's in the
Yeah.
house. That's how you
Yeah.
advertise for it. And I think that would be kind of funny in a sense. It's just like, oh damn, I like that advertising ploy
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
It's crafty,
Hmm.
and it makes sense. And we've all seen it. Like, wasn't there like I forget exactly which one it was, but a Marvel movie where at the end of it, Robert Downey Jr. gets into like an Audi R8, I think it
Hmm.
was.
Yeah.
It was like super obvious. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that product placement is interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so we noticed it in the films, and it doesn't bother us. Quite
Mm-mm.
frankly, I think it was like, oh, that's a sick looking car
Yeah.
because
And
like a
then
new R8.
everybody goes to look it up, and those people that have the money, they're like, I want the Robert Downey, the Iron Man car.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I think it's great.
Yeah.
You nailed it. You put somebody as cool as like Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man
Hmm.
on it. It's like, oh, dude, that's badass. I want
Yeah.
that. And then if I see I don't know, if I see The Rock like destroying a Chick-fil-A sandwich or like a burger from McDonald's, I'm gonna be like, oh, dude, so I can get that big,
Yeah.
like that if
I'm
I eat
tempted.
like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, there you
Yeah.
go. But I like it. I think it's smart.
Yeah, no, I think it's smart. And like one example I have is The Founder, the movie about McDonald's. Have you
Okay.
seen it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, parts of it, not the
Yeah.
full thing.
But every time I watch that movie or I just see clips of it, I want McDonald's. I want to
Yeah.
have McDonald's and it's like come up with a movie of how you created Chick-fil-A and why you're really closed Sundays, and make it dramatic. Why you don't open on Sundays, something dramatic happened and it's like, okay, Sundays are off for Chick-fil-A.
Yep.
Best Buy, same thing. Make it futuristic where the electronics are taking over, something creative and crazy and it'll sell.
Hell yeah. No, and I actually recently saw the French fry scene from Founders, and they
Oh,
were
yeah.
talking about like how much to cook it, how little to cook it,
Yeah.
and like what was best. French fries look lit.
Yeah.
Like they look crunchy, they look delicious, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
McDonald's French fries when they're hot, legit.
Legit.
Thinking back to it, it wasn't necessarily in a movie, but their advertisements were always really good for it. And yeah, feel like, you could easily incorporate this into a movie was Carl's Jr. burgers back in the day. Remember when they bite into it and like it would make that extreme crunch sound
Hmm.
and like all the juice would like drip
Yeah, all the
everywhere.
sauces like just
Dude, that it looked like such a freaking good burger at
hmm.
that time. It would
Yeah.
make me really hungry too. Is
Yeah.
like just that crunch. And that would be easy product placement
Yeah,
in
it
something.
would be.
Everybody's always eating in a film.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, dude, it's not bad. I think it's a good
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. Like I say, if these, like we mentioned, if the Trump tariffs for movies happen, a lot of these companies are within the state, so it might be their opportunity to sort of get into the movie business, the TV business, create reality TV shows, you know, make it a Survivor episode where, you're sponsoring one of the meals. Like, okay, if you win today's challenge, you're gonna get Chick-fil-A, you're gonna get McDonald's,
Yeah.
nice chicken sandwiches, nice chocolate shakes, all that stuff. Like, great product placement, and it'd be awesome. So,
Yeah, no, that'd be legit. Yeah, imagine like you're on Survivor and somebody's like chowing down a quarter pounder in front of you. You're like, what the fuck?
you're gonna hate it. You'd be
Would be
hating
so
it
pissed.
after not
Hate that
eating for
person.
10 after not eating for
Oh,
10 days and they're eating like a Big Mac. Oh man, you're
hell
eliminated
yeah.
next. Hey, I'm gonna write your name down.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Be hella pissed.
Uh,
Yeah, that'd be funny.
yeah. Yeah,
There's
so
there's crafty ways they can do that.
yeah, there is. Yeah, so I'm curious to see where these companies how they continue moving away from ads, how they create their own content to sort of promote their ads. It's going to be very interesting because, like I say, reality TV shows, product placement, NIL type deals with movie studios to use their products in film. It's going to go a long way. I think the way movie, sports, everything's changing, and we everybody has to adapt to this new change.
Definitely. Yeah. No, and then in film, it'll at least be nice because there's times where it's like it's obvious it's
Mhm.
something, but because of like trademarking and
Yeah,
branding, like they can't reveal exactly what it is, but we all
yeah,
know that they're in a certain restaurant.
yeah.
At least now they can work towards like making it legit, like
Mhm.
you know. The Avengers go eat at Olive Garden. We'll
Yeah.
know that it's Olive Garden.
Yeah.
So good stuff.
Yeah.
Great idea, fun.
Yeah.
Good where we're going.
Yeah. We'll see
Hopefully
where
not the
that goes.
tariffs.
Yeah. Hopefully not the tariffs. Hopefully more opportunities and just more content. Like I said, we all love movies, TV shows, and like I said, not just us, everybody does. So
Mhm.
it'll be good and interesting. But yeah, that's what we have for today's episode. So thank you everybody that has joined us. As always, if you've joined us since episode one. We truly appreciate you always listening, hanging out with us, bantering with us. If you haven't subscribed to YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, please hit that follow button to get alerts when new episodes are released. And as always, leave your comments, your thoughts, your takes, your banter with us. We truly appreciate it. We had a lot of great banter
Mhm.
takes, and even, other commenters bantering with each other and not us. Great content. And like I say, it's all friendly banter. We're
Yeah.
not here to be, offended, but we all have our takes, we all have our thoughts, and we're here to share them.
Definitely. Yeah, we're arguing about like the GOAT of the NBA.
Yeah.
It's that's the argument. We're not arguing anything crazy. So,
Yeah.
it's all friendly banter at the end of the day, but that's exactly what we're all about
Hmm.
here. And love to see it. Continue
Yeah.
to feel free to engage, good or bad, neutral, doesn't matter. Recommendations,
Hmm.
we'll always take.
Yes.
It's fun. We're
Hmm.
we're we're having the time of our lives with this. So
Yeah.
we'll keep spewing out the content for sure. And any topics that you guys want us to talk about,
Hmm.
we don't fray away from it. That's why we stick with our banter takes the
Hmm.
way we do. Is we live and die by them. So
Yes, for sure. But yeah, thank you everybody. Have a great rest of your week. If you're celebrating Cinco de Mayo and listening to this on Wednesday, hopefully you guys are okay, survived it. If you're celebrating May the 6th, hopefully, you didn't get it young, you didn't youngling too many, young Jedis like Anakin did, but hopefully you had
Messed
a
up.
great time celebrating. But yeah, as always, thank you guys and we appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.
Peace.